Are you experiencing back pain that you can't get rid of? Getting migraines, vertigo, having trouble sleeping, and/or brain fog? Do you feel like your medical doctor doesn't understand your condition? Blair Chiropractic might be the solution you've been looking for. If you've ever been skeptical about this, the two doctors you're about to listen to were even more skeptical than you were when they looked into chiropractic work. But fear not. Get expert guidance from the blonde and the bald, Doctors Beth Bagley and Frederick Scherger. These two doctors have extensive experience beyond the healthcare realm and bringing unique vision and healing to their patients. What do you have when you get a biological analyst and an engineer together? Find out right here on another episode of The Blonde and the Bald. Welcome your hosts, Doctors Bagley and Scherger.
Welcome, folks, to The Blonde and the Bald. I'm Dr. Frederick Scherger.
Hi, I'm Dr. Beth Bagley. How are you doing on this wonderful Friday?
I am doing excellent, and I'm going to get this. I'm going to get the apology out of the way first. Things got busy here in April, and I'm going to be. We'll be uploading this early. We've got a couple other episodes in the tank, but those will be coming up. But that's why we've been away, because life got busy. So
it does that. It does that. So, but we've got a really good show today, and it is all about pregnancy and chiropractic. And the first thing I wanted to kind of bring up was that pregnancy is a state in the body, a normal state of the female body. But to become pregnant, you have to have a healthy body. And we have been seeing an epidemic of people that cannot get pregnant. And I've got ideas of why, and some of the things we can't even talk about of why. But I also think that that's really important for people to realize that chiropractic is part of keeping everybody healthy, but a female body healthy, so that you can become pregnant to begin with. So what I've noticed recently, you can tell me if you've seen the same, is that there's more and more young people. Well, two things is people are waiting until they're a little older to get pregnant, which is harder. And that's one of the problems that we're seeing, but also that they are even young, healthy looking people are not able to get pregnant. And that's not something, and infertility has been, it's not like a new problem. There's definitely been infertility. My own story of how I came to become a human on this planet was my mom suffered with infertility for a decade. And she was told she couldn't have children. And she was under chiropractic care. Her father, my grandfather, was a chiropractor. And she had just given up. And she was in her early 30s, which at that time, 40 something years ago, that was considered what would be considered a geriatric pregnancy. Now it's just normal pregnancies. But she was sitting in church at a wedding, I believe. And she sneezed and a button on her pants flew off. She thought, wow, I've gained some weight. And she had missed a period, but she didn't think anything of it. She honestly thought, well, I have a tumor and I'm going to die. So she did go to the doctor and found out that I was the miracle. So she wasn't even trying at that point to get pregnant. So I'm not saying that infertility is new, because it is not new. But there are so many people talking about how they're doing in vitro fertilization or all of these very expensive procedures in order to just have a baby, which is something that our bodies should naturally do. So the chiropractic perspective of that is, how do we create a healthy mom? How do we make this female body healthier so that it can house this growing, amazing baby? Nutritionally, we've talked a lot about protein. And I do think protein is essential for a mother or a future mother to have, it's a building block of not only your body, but a growing baby. So having an adequate amount of protein in your diet, and what's the rule of thumb again with the protein?
I would say the more that I'm looking into the literature and the more that it's coming out, go with a gram per pound of body weight. You can, in a day, you might be a little low or a little high on that, but if you're aiming for that, you're doing pretty good. If you are, of course, if you're over, if you're still trying to have a baby and you're in your late 30s, push for at least a gram, if not 1.5 grams per pound. Because what they're finding is as we get older, we need more protein, and because we're not turning it over, our body needs that to fuel properly. So again, that's how I would sort of suggest and sort of gear that up.
Yeah. And I know everyone's heard drink enough water. Healthy hydration is essential for the normal female cycle. And we could go into tons of nutritional things, but that's not really what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the chiropractic implications. So
Right.
If we think about the pelvis as a bowl, and that bowl becomes twisted on one side and not on the other. So we have a subluxation or a misalignment, whatever you want to call it, of the pelvis. So that's the sacrum, the connection between the two, which is the SI joint or sacroiliac joint, the pubic symphysis in the front, and a lot of the hip bones connect in there, and all sorts of connections with the soft tissues. If there is a misalignment in there, so let's say, oh, I'm a mom, or I want to be a mom, but my back hurts sometimes. Well, that's an indication that your pelvis is not aligned. And if your pelvis is not aligned, there are little ligaments, one of them being the round ligament. There's a few other ligaments, but there's little ligaments that connect between your pelvis and your uterus. And if those ligaments are kind of being pulled slightly off on one side and off the other, it's going to create tension in the uterus that's not supposed to be there. That in turn not only can cause problems with getting pregnant, but it also can be causing problems maintaining a pregnancy, and then healthy outcomes with labor and delivery. So chiropractors do adjustments on the spine and low back. Some of us, I've become what we call Webster certified. So it's through the ICPA, which is the International Chiropractic Pediatric Association. And you can read a lot on their website. It's ICPA4kids.com or org. Oh, I'm going to look up. I just looked it up. And, or kids.com. It's .com. And that certification, the Webster certification is, I do think it's important for prior to pregnancy and after pregnancy, or during pregnancy and after, to have the pelvis aligned. And everyone would say, well, you're an upper cervical chiropractor. You touch anything, but I absolutely will look at the pelvis of especially a pregnant woman. I also look at the pelvis of not pregnant women and men, even, because that stuff can come up and get stuck. And we help people get unstuck. My number one concern is the upper cervical spine. Even in a pregnant woman, if I was only allowed to adjust one thing, it would be C1 if it was misaligned. But if there is a structural shift happening at the pelvic level, what we're going to find is the pregnancies are harder. Keeping a pregnancy can be harder, and then the pain associated with being pregnant is honestly, it shouldn't hurt to be pregnant. Your body should just naturally go. It could be a little achy, but it shouldn't be painful. So women will sometimes suffer even with sciatica, which is pain down into the leg, considered a radiculopathy. And what that just means is literal pinching on a nerve, whether it's happening at the bone level, like at the actual back, which can happen during pregnancy, or it could be at the soft tissues, because there are muscles and changes happening there during pregnancy too. So the low back issues that we see a lot of times is because if you think we put a bowling ball, and even men, you guys can think about it, is put a bowling ball and tuck it into your pants even. What's going to happen is naturally your back's going to arch forward.
Right.
And so that arching itself can start causing back pain. Now, we shouldn't have it overarching. Now, if you're someone like me and you already have a hyperlordotic back, which I definitely do, it's something I work on, then we have the issue of it's even more lordotic, especially if you're having twins, which is what I did.
Right.
So I did get chiropractic care through my pregnancy. I think it did help. Honestly, I wish I would have gotten even more, but back then I was so busy trying to run my own practice and being pregnant at the same time. I didn't make as much time for myself as I should have. So post pregnancy, honestly, people should be getting chiropractic care too, because that is a traumatic thing that your body just went through. Now, it's a natural thing your body just went through, but also the birth process itself can cause all sorts of pain and subluxations or misalignments in the spine. Now, what I found with a lot of my my pregnancy patients that are having more issues than not is that there's a certain thing happening with their pelvis when they're pregnant. And a lot of times I don't meet these women until after they're already pregnant, because they come to me. I do have some, obviously, that come through my office and then become pregnant, and I take care of them through their pregnancies, which is my favorite. That's what I like to do. But I'm not going to turn away an individual who is pregnant because she because she didn't find me beforehand. But one of the issues then is I typically will not get a CBCT or a imaging of their neck unless it's a kind of an emergency situation where they're having some huge neurological problems.
Well, and I'm going to touch on that, because I think that's less a problem than what has traditionally been thought. What's interesting is when when people are saying, "Hey, I'm having these problems and I want to seek out chiropractic care." And we've talked about this, how the importance of imaging, so we know exactly how to create a custom correction for the patient. One thing that we have going for us, even when we were using plain and digital X-ray, the high voltage or the high frequency generators that exist in modern offices are a much lower dose than when the initial low frequency generators were out. So you actually have a much lower dose just from that. And then on top of that, we collimate, which means we make sure the ray is no wider than the area that we're looking at. So we don't have any extra scatter radiation. So when we were, if I had a pregnant patient come into my office, I would image because I need to know where I'm going to help them to the best of their possibility. But the other side of that was I would I'd grab a double lead vest over the, over the pregnancy, over the belly, to make sure that we didn't have that. But even with that in mind, the cone beam CTs that we are taking now, they are such a low dose radiation. I mean, let's be honest, there are states that basically look at the cone beam and say, yeah, you shouldn't, the person hitting the button shouldn't be in the room while it's delivering the radiation dosage. But it is, again, so small that like a family member could be next to them. If it's like a child or a young adult who's like a little nervous, someone could be in the room with them as it's happening. The old adage of the lead walled shield, or of all the lead shielding around the unit, we don't have that anymore. We just need drywall, and that's adequate. So it's not necessarily something we have to worry about. Sometimes we're like, let's see what we can do without it, and see if we hit a wall within a visit or two. And oftentimes that's, that makes it easier. And again, you could do a lead drape over them and we wouldn't have any issues there.
Yeah. And I think that would be a case by case basis. I would talk to the patient depending on what they had going on.
And their comfort level.
Yeah. One instance I can think of, we had a pregnant woman come in with trigeminal neuralgia and she couldn't sleep. I mean, this was affecting her pregnancy at this point. And we didn't at first take pictures because, we talked about, there's negative, there could be a possibility of a negative impact on the baby. And, we gave her that choice. And then after a few visits, we did hit a wall. We were not seeing a change. It wasn't working right. And we decided to go, we talked to her about it. I talked to her husband. We made a decision as a team. Let's, drape lead. We got the images. We were not adjusting her correctly. The images did show us that we had to do a better job. And it was an immediate change. And she was able to sleep again. She was able to eat. She was able to do all the things to help that pregnancy move forward. And she was from India. So she was going back to India after the baby was born.
Right.
And so we only got to see her like one or two more times after that. But then I happened to be at Costco after the baby was born, and she came up and she showed me the baby and she was so excited. And
Wonderful.
Gave me a big hug, and it was so awesome. But they were they were pretty much the next day going back to India.
Right.
So, but that's one of those instances where I didn't feel bad about. It was like, hey, this is not this baby is not doing well because mom isn't doing well, and we had to make that clinical decision.
Right, and that's one of those that's one of those situations where we're going back and forth between the autonomic balance between rest, digest, and heal, which is definitely what's going on during pregnancy, and fight or flight. We could argue probably really well that most miscarriages are because a patient is, a woman's in fight or flight mode so high that the body says, I'm at risk. I cannot carry this pregnancy to term, and hence have a miscarriage. So there, so that is one side of that risk. So you definitely need to make sure that, you're not so into that fight or flight mode. In fact, a newly pregnant patient of mine was saying she got home, I think Thursday and went to bed at 6 o'clock, and she didn't wake up for 18 hours because she's so tired now. That'll be a story in that autonomics and, dad's health that we'll get to a little bit later, because I think that's important. But the other thing I wanted to point out, that the most sensitive times to any sort of radiation, and I'm going to go beyond just radiation, alcohol, smoking, all of the things that are going to be most damaging, including flying cross country, to a baby, are going to happen in the first 8 weeks, often when a woman never knows that she's pregnant, which is the irony of so many women today, that they're out, they're having a great time, they're partying, they're still drinking alcohol, they're still smoking cigarettes, and then they realize, wait a second, I've been pregnant.
Or vaping.
Where's
the studies on the vaping? Everyone thinks it's so healthy for me, I can vape and it's not bad. I was like, there's probably some negative things happening to babies right now. So I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah, exactly. Give us 20 years. We'll know what that means. But the first 8 weeks are the most critical. So if you think you even might be pregnant, watch out for that stuff, because, fetal alcohol syndrome is no joke. The children have a hard time in life. I know some adults that have had that. They're doing their best, but there are other issues involved there. So
absolutely. Actually, it's funny that you said the fight or flight thing, because that brought up a thought. Is not only during the first part of pregnancy, that's an issue. So chiropractors, one of our wonderful things that we help with is getting people to balance their autonomic nervous system through the chiropractic adjustment. And fight or flight is when your body, like a bear, walks in the room and you're about to run away. It's so scary. You're going to fight.
Right.
Well, if you're in that state, your body's natural process, some of them are going to turn off and some of them are going to turn on. And the on ones are the ones your heart's beating faster and you got to run. The off ones are, you're not going to digest food well. You're not going to fall asleep easily. So that's what, and it's not a good time to be pregnant if you're scared all the time. So your body will reject a pregnancy because of that. There's lots of other reasons the pregnancy can terminate on its own. There could be a problem with the actual genetics and all sorts of things. So I don't want to blame everything on moms. Anybody listening to that is absolutely, there's a million things that can go wrong. And a lot of those aren't your fault. But one of the things that we can do is get chiropractic adjustment, take some time for ourselves, work on our breathing, work on prayer and meditation, help ourselves be calmer through the pregnancy. It is just outrageously good for everyone, but so good for pregnant women. But in the middle of, I keep going back and forth between where we are in pregnancy. So let's talk about labor. Yeah. So one of the things is I tell my ladies is that before you give birth, come into the office when it's about to be, we're right in that 37, 38, 42 range of weeks. And I call it, I try not to say when's your due date. I was like, when's the estimated time of arrival?
Yes.
Because due dates are like, that's not a date. That's just an estimate of, it could be 2 weeks before, it could be 2 weeks after. That's a whole month of time where you could be giving birth. And obviously there's times around that, usually before that could happen, which we don't want to happen. But I want women to stop worrying about that actual date, because if you look at that date and then you haven't given birth yet, some of the options are to like induce your the labor process. And the problems with that is the artificial chemical they put in you, the pitocin. Pitocin will actually create such strong contractions in women that they will automatically say, this hurts so bad, give me an epidural. So even if you didn't want one, you get one. And then now you can't stand up. And if you can't stand up during your pregnancy or during your labor and delivery, or you can't get up and move at all, the chances of you having a C-section drastically increase.
Yes.
And 1/3 of all births in the United States are C-section deliveries. And that is crazy high.
Mm-hmm.
We should not be cutting so many women open. Now, thank God for C-section deliveries, because it saves moms and babies.
Right.
I'm not saying that they're bad, but the amount that's happening in the United States is astronomically high. And that is a huge pelvic surgery that's happening. And women then 2 days later have to be at home taking care of a newborn and recovering from a major surgery.
Right.
And that's a big deal.
And when you were shopping around for OBGYNs, or when you found one, did they have experience delivering twins?
Oh, you're going to love this story. So you're going to bring
triplets
this one up.
More.
I didn't have an OBGYN.
Of course
I
not.
used a midwife. And so I didn't even know I was having twins until I was 7.5 months pregnant, because I didn't get ultrasounds either, because that's another thing that I know an ultrasound is putting waves of sound. Everyone's gonna be like, you're crazy and so granola. Well, I expect to have a healthy baby. And even if this baby isn't healthy, if there was something going on with the baby, I wasn't going to terminate the pregnancy. That's just not what I wanted to do. So I was 7.5 months, and my midwife was doing a lower dose Doppler sound one. I know that's still ultrasound. Everybody calm down, but it's not the full on one. And I was far enough along in the pregnancy that I wasn't so worried about it, just like we were talking about radiation.
Right.
And she was like, something sounds weird. And then she measured me. They use measurements to see where you are. And they go from hip bone to hip bone and they measure. And she goes, you're getting awful big. And I go, lady, I didn't say it out loud, but I was like, lady, you shut your mouth. I'm 6'2". My husband's 6'3". I was like, we're big people. We're going to have big baby. And she goes, no, I think there's 2 in there. And I was like, what? What? So I kind of had an inkling anyway, because I was feeling some kicks in places where the legs shouldn't go that direction.
Right.
At the same time. So I kind of had thought of it, and I just didn't want to believe it. But then at that point, I did get an ultrasound, because I was far enough along, because I wanted to confirm that there were 2 babies, and there were 2 beautiful girls. And I did find out the sex at that point, because I was like, I've had enough surprise. I'm good.
Yeah.
And I decided to still continue with a home birth, because my midwife had done many twin births in her career. She was a tried and true. She was one of those ones who go to the Amish, go everywhere. She probably, your Amish, because she would go all the way into Illinois, your Amish friends up there absolutely probably knew her. I don't think she's practicing anymore, but if she is, that would be wonderful. She doesn't have a web presence or anything. You have to know someone to know her.
Oh, very nice.
Anyway, and I knew chiropractors who knew her, so I was able to get her phone number. Anyway, so she was like, yep, we can do it. And 2 other midwives in training came to the birth, because she had told other people, and those midwives in training had never seen a twin birth, so they came. And everything was great, the whole thing. But one of the things I was going to talk about with fight or flight is in a class that I took during my pregnancy, which I can't think of the name of it right now. I will think of it before we end it, but it's not Lamaze, but it's one like that. But they talk about protector of the cave. So caveman days, right?
Right.
The man needed to protect the woman while they were giving birth, to keep bad things away, because it's a very vulnerable state for a woman to be in, especially if there's a grizzly bear coming at you. So if a grizzly bear is coming at you during your birth's going to turn off.
Right.
So your labor is going to turn off, and now you can't get the baby out. Same thing is you're having a hospital birth. If there's a nurse or an energy. It could be a family member that keeps coming in and it's like, what's going on? What's happening? And they're bringing that energy to your birth, your room that you're going to give birth to, your birth partner, whether whoever that is. I have a husband, so I'm going to assume husband while I'm saying this, but my husband, his job was to keep the energies away that were causing that. So that could be, if you're doing a home birth, it could be a family member that comes in and has some sort of, and we did
drama.
have to ask the person to leave the drama. Or it could be a hospital worker where you have to pull them out of the room and say, hey, I need you to bring this down a level because we're keeping it calm in here while she is doing some miraculous things with her body. And so I think anyone who's going through labor and delivery, whether in a hospital, at home, whatever, is to talk to your partner. If you don't have a partner, find a partner to be that protector of the cave, because that was so important, and giving them permission to be mean sometimes, not to the person giving birth, but to the people that might be bringing drama into your space, because your space needs to be calm. If you want to bring the drama, you bring the drama, but nobody else is allowed to.
Exactly.
So that's that fight or flight that we're trying. And that's one of the reasons I like to check people sometimes the day before they give birth, whatever it ends up being, is to help them stay into that calm state so that their body can function the way that it was designed, making sure their pelvis is aligned right at the end, also to make sure that that birth canal is straight and what it's supposed to be doing. We don't have torsion between the two sides of the pelvis. Oh my gosh, it's just incredible. As you guys can tell, it's one of my favorite things. I love taking care of pregnant women. I love helping them have hopefully the births that they want to, no matter what. We're just happy with having healthy moms and healthy babies, because it doesn't always work out like we want it to. But we do everything in our physical possible to try. At least we can say we did it all. We tried, and hey, this happened or this happened. As long as we're all healthy, we're great.
Right. Because this is why you want to have the best team around you for your pregnancy and your birth, so that everything in the pregnancy goes smoothly. And then when you get to the birth, it also goes smoothly, but you have, contingency plans ready to go in the case of baby didn't turn, baby is got a cord wrapped around their neck. You can't get to the hospital fast enough, depending upon how far along you are, and the baby needs to come out now, and you need somebody who is experienced with a breech birth, which happens. It used to happen a lot more before C-sections became as popular, and how many people do not have that experience. That's why even
in hospitals they don't have the experience with breech births.
Right. So which is why they do C-sections so commonly.
Yeah, which also is one of those things about the Webster technique.
Right.
Now, nowhere is the Webster technique they're going to say, we turn babies, because that is not what it does.
Right.
But what I've seen multiple times in my experience is we have a pelvis that is torqued, we untorque it, and sometimes even later that day, the mom feels and she knows that baby has turned. So we create the space in the mom so that baby can sit where it's supposed to. And it's always so cool when that happens.
Absolutely. And that's just a matter of getting things working the way they're supposed to, which has always been the first premise of chiropractic, is that we're trying to get your nervous system working and functioning so your body works and functions normally.
Yes. And your body is totally designed to do. If somebody right now is listening to this and they're so scared to become pregnant, or give birth, your body naturally knows what to do. It's incredible. I've gone through it. I couldn't believe it. I did not use any pain medications. And I'm not saying that to be like, I'm awesome and people who use pain medications aren't. I'm saying that because I thoroughly believed through my pregnancy that my body knew what it's supposed to do.
Right.
I knew that it was intelligent beyond my own educated brain. And I can't tell you how weird it was that when I finally was going through that, is, no one even needs to tell you to push. That whole thing of in the movies are like, okay, push.
Right.
There's none of that. If you're in a natural state and everything, if your body's just gonna, when it's ready, it just starts pushing.
Yeah. exactly.
And the baby actually pushes too. It's kind of a two-way thing. So it just takes over. Nature takes over during that time, and it's incredible. But if we do things that counteract nature, like Pitocin, like epidurals, like pain medicines, it isn't as easy for your body to do what it naturally is supposed to do.
Right.
And I'm not saying that you're, again, bad for doing those things. Honestly, I don't care. I care about everybody listening, but I don't care that you do that. I care that you know that when that does happen, you're increasing the likelihood of an outcome that could include surgery.
Yes.
And again, everybody do your own thing, but just know that those, in my opinion, in my own experience, I wanted to keep the percentages down. Anything that I could see that was going to increase the percentage of an issue, I wanted to completely either eliminate it or reduce it to near to zero.
Absolutely. Very cool. Anything else on delivery that you want to touch on? Because I have a couple other ideas and thoughts that I want to go through real quick.
Delivery. I probably could talk 3 hours on it, but no, you can keep going.
And I was going to say the other thing that we want to address is baby just came through a 10-centimeter hole.
Yeah.
That's crude, but that's really what happened.
Post delivery. Yes.
Yes. So one, you'll probably want to get adjusted, mothers, as soon as you feel comfortable, leaving the house, right? Bring the babies. They also need to get checked. They might not need to get adjusted, but they absolutely need to get checked so that they're doing the best they can.
Absolutely. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I've told the story about, this is all going to get cut out and we'll come back
to it. I hope so.
Anyways, I'll go first. I had the one, I've told the story about my friend's son who wouldn't latch, mom, wouldn't let down, and he wouldn't sleep. He was colicky for 9 months. We get him adjusted 9 months later, and he finally is doing better. But if mom had had a little bit more open-mindedness to saying, hey, maybe I should be under care now that everything is getting cattywampus, dad was already on board, things might have been different, but they are what they are. But the sooner you get the kids checked, the better they might sleep through the night. And if you like sleeping through the night, I'm just saying, I had one, we have a colleague, I can't remember where he practices. They have 6 kids. We went to a seminar. His wife was there, and she had just had their newest child, who was about a month old, 6 hours through the night, every night already. So it can happen.
I also wanted to bring up that littler babies, because I had little babies, 5-pound range, need to be fed more often. So don't feel like just because, your friend who had a 9-pound baby has the baby sleeping through the night at 1 month or, 6 hours isn't necessary through the night, but dang, does it feel good after not only sleeping. But little ones might need to only be sleeping for 2 hours at a time, and that is perfectly fine too. It is actually more than fine. You have to keep those little ones fed more often. So I know sleeping through the night sounds great, but you do have a couple months that you need to put into waking up pretty often, especially for the teeny little ones.
Exactly.
But you are not wrong. Colic is not natural, or, oh, my kid's just colicky. That is not, no, that's like saying I have a normal headache.
Right.
Kids don't have normal colic. Kids don't have normal acid reflux when they're babies. Kids don't have jaw issues, ear infections, torticollis with their head tilted, poor latches. None of that's natural. None of that's just bad luck. That is structural in nature, and that is what we come to check. Most chiropractors check babies. Not all of them do, so call when you're calling for a chiropractor. You can check the ICPA website, icpa4kids.com, and they have a list of pediatric chiropractors on there. But a lot of upper cervical doctors absolutely check kids.
Absolutely.
And I definitely do. But the one thing I can say, I've had patients on their way home from the hospital come by. They haven't even been home yet, and the first thing they wanted to do was get that baby checked by the chiropractor, which is honestly the biggest compliment a chiropractor can
really
get.
Is when you bring your children,
hand over their newborn to you.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, Doc, I got a little one. Let's get this one adjusted as soon as possible. it really is an honor to sort of for them to say that. So any case, so I want to hit a couple other topics. First, you basically said there earlier there were like two groups of people having hard times getting pregnant. Do you remember what they were, just so that we can recap?
The two groups of people?
Well, there were two sides, there tend to be two groups of people that were having
the people that are older, because people are waiting too long to get married, and not that everybody's married having kids, but people are getting married later and having kids later, and the female body was actually meant to start having kids, in the probably 16th year. We're pretty darn fertile.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we should get pregnant at 16, no, but in our 20s, that should be the ideal time to be pregnant. And so later it's harder. And then people who are overweight tend to have trouble. We didn't talk about that, but if you have a lot of weight on you, you have extra estrogen, and that's like taking birth control pills through your own body.
Well, plus it puts you at a higher risk of both preeclampsia, which is, high blood pressure, pregnancy related, and diabetes, and, potentially turning you diabetic, because you're already carrying that extra
diabetes.
weight. Well, you'd have
gestational.
It starts off gestational, but it primes you for type 2.
Yeah. Oh, it's because you're probably already primed for type 2.
Right. Exactly.
Go ahead.
There's a third subsection in that getting older group that I want to touch on. Women that have been on birth control for an extended period of time. When we understand what birth control is doing, is it is basically convincing the woman's body that she's pregnant all the time. So when you get off birth control, a couple things have happened. Let's, assume that you've not been trying to get pregnant, you've been on birth control, you've been sexually active. You might actually find, as you come off birth control intentionally with the partner you picked while on birth control, you are no longer attracted to said mate, which is some weirdness going on. And there might be other emotional issues that, cause problems, or something is going on with him on top of that, where he's not balanced. His nervous system is not balanced properly either, because there is, in order to be pregnant, you have to get pregnant, and there is a two-part process of the autonomic nervous system that we've been talking about, balanced for dad to be actually able to deliver on both sides. So without getting too graphic, if you're, the sympathetic system, it's actually 3 F's. I'll let you figure out the third. It's fight, flight, and F. So folks, that's how, the sympathetic is your arousal state. But in order to finish the job, in order to deliver the package, how about that? You actually have to switch into a parasympathetic state, because you actually have to be relaxed enough to release. And
that's incredibly, when we talk about chiropractic and balancing, like both of those systems, they have to switch pretty quickly. And if you're not in a good, if you're subluxated, it's way harder to do that.
Yes. And ladies, you wonder why your guy falls asleep afterwards. It's because his body switched, and he is exhausted, and he is literally switched from that ready, set, go to, I did a lot, I'm gonna go take a nap. So
rest and digest.
And that's the rest and digest side of the things. And what's interesting is the young lady who came in yesterday, she had, she told me the good news that they're finally pregnant. They've been trying for over a year. The irony of the situation, well, when they first started about a year ago, trying to have, they got married about 2, trying to have a baby last year. This was before, dad comes in to get checked, and he's like, man, this is so stressful, because this is the time, that they're trying to figure out her cycle when she is most likely to get pregnant, hours in the day, all these timing factors. And sure enough, they're just, it's killing them, because it's so stressful that their sympathetics are drived up, and their parasympathetics, to allow the pregnancy to happen, aren't working at all. So here's the irony, because he's this very type A personality, had COVID 3 or 4 times, never got the jab, but ends up with a heart attack, looking like as if he had COVID. So something else was going on in his nervous system. that he wasn't able to fight it properly, which is why he ended up getting it about 3 times. And what ended up happening, he has massive coronary problems. He's been almost a year now, coming out of it and rehabbing. He's back to work about 3 or 4 days a week, still a high pressure job, but he's able to be more relaxed about it. And he's also able to leave it at the office at the end of the day. And sure enough, awesome. They've been pregnant for about 10 weeks at the time of this recording. So, all of these parts, you can't get mom pregnant if dad isn't delivering properly. So
the other thing is how sperm counts come into play. Is there
yes.
a lot of things and chemicals in our systems right now that are causing lower sperm counts? But the easiest thing you can do to increase your sperm count is to not use your seat warmer, because warm testicles do not make
good babies.
They don't make good spermies.
The swimmers will not swim.
No, they don't. And so if you're like, oh, I love my seat warmer and you're trying to get your girl pregnant, do not use your seat warmer anymore. That is that's not smart. And then the other thing is having more of a wearing boxers is allowing your testicles to be away from your body, because again, the warmth that's why they exist outside of your body. Is because it needs to be cooler for the sperm to generate. So keep those babies chilly.
Yep. The other things that I would include for the men. How many stories do we hear about people going out for a bender and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, we're pregnant now because we were drinking and partying it up? Yeah, sure, that happens. But if you're having a hard time getting pregnant, cut the booze out completely, because there's so much garbage and junk. Alcohol is not your friend.
No.
In fact, alcohol is poison.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are, if you're still having trouble, take a look at your diet, clean up your diet. Do you have to go full carnivore or keto? No, but you might want to go that direction a little bit and
slow the sugar.
Cut the sugar, increase the healthy fats. That's key.
And do not eat soy at all. Soy is like taking a birth control pill. Do not eat soy.
There was another one. Well, and we look at Japan. Japan has some of the lowest birth rates and replacement rates right now in the world. They have a lot of soy in their diet. There's one other thing that they have in their diet, and it's escaping me at the moment. But I would move away from that. There's some benefits of fermented soy that certainly exist.
Yeah, fermented soy. Fermented soy actually does break down, like a natto.
Right.
Not tofu. Tofu doesn't do it, but natto will actually the chemical that affects people in the estrogen way is actually reduced to almost nothing in natto.
Right.
So I am not talking about natto, or if you're taking natto kinase, which is excellent for cardiovascular and recovering from COVID stuff.
Yes.
So I'm not talking about that form of soy.
Yep.
Because there's all sorts. Just because we say soy is bad doesn't mean that is bad. And that's the same thing. I could say water is bad for you if you drink 4 gallons of it.
Right.
So we've got to look at we got to look at amounts, but also what the chemical actually is that's affecting people.
Exactly. The other thing I wanted to touch on is specifically how the Blair chiropractic technique has actually helped people try to get pregnant. We have told the story about Dr. John Hilpish up in Lake Elmo, Minnesota in the past, who has 6 children of his own, very Catholic. And the joke I like to tell when I see him, it's like, well, Hilpish, have you gotten any more patients pregnant lately?
Women pregnant?
Because he had over 22 cases when he published the one study showing that they got and again, mom and dad were both patients in order to help them get pregnant. And
that's a really good point. That whole, I'll be one to actually think through that, is if the next woman who comes in saying, I'm having problems with fertility, I'll be like, well, your husband needs to come in too.
Yeah.
Because that's, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. That's a big deal.
And back to my patient who was having all the problems. He would stress about everything. And when I would, after adjusting him and letting him rest, if I didn't get him up in 20 minutes, not 21 minutes, 20 minutes,
like that.
He was already sitting up and now he is so laid back and so relaxed there's that parasympathetic for whatever reason. How much of it's mental for him after going through the heart attack and all the surgeries that he's gone through over the past year? Don't know. But certainly it is him acknowledging that there's more going on than just trying to figure out the problem. So now if I got busy and he's 25 minutes in there, he's like, I can stay. He's not in a rush anymore. So again, it's getting that balance for both dad and mom when they're having trouble. Man, that's a bunch of stuff.
Man, we went through a bunch. I hope that was not too much for you guys to listen to.
And I've got one.
We jumped around quite a bit, but I get so excited.
I've got one more case I want to share. She was in. Well, we just had our seminar this past weekend. She was texting me back and forth. Can you get me in on Sunday? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Let's do it. This is it's one of my Ehlers-Danlos cases. I mean, her spine looks like she's 80. If you looked at it, it is an absolute mess. But sure enough, she was told she would never have children because of some of the health issues she had. She's got a beautiful 10, 11-year-old daughter who dad's down here, so she comes down to visit from Chicago periodically, and just again, it's a quality of life thing. If we can improve the quality of life, can we reverse things? No. Can we stabilize things? Yes. And can we make sure that you can have as much fun as what you were supposed to do here on this planet in the short time that you have allowed? I think so. And I think that's really the take-home message is a lot of what we do is just to try to make sure your body works the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, for sure. Well, where can they find you, Dr. Sugar?
I am at Keystone Chiropractic on the interwebs. It's KeystoneChiroSPI.com. And here in Springfield, Illinois, that's the other part of that. Where are you?
I'm in St. Louis, Missouri, and we are on the west side. We are at Precision Chiropractic STL.com. And we are all over all the socials. Yep. You can just search me up, Dr. Beth Bagley.
Sounds good. Folks, make sure you like, subscribe, give us a 5-star review. Just tell us how good it is. If you give us a 1-star review, we will definitely post that. We'll have fun with you. But no. Make sure share this show with people who who are like, man, I wish I'd like to get pregnant again, and I'm having all sorts of problems, or I got pregnant 10 years ago, or whatnot. We had problems. Share this show and other shows like this, so that people know that there is hope and help for them in getting them back into ship shape the way they're supposed to be. Again, apologies for this being a delayed episode or for a couple weeks off, but things got busy, and we're going to get back on schedule here. And we look forward to having you here, listen to us again next week. Until then, Dr. Bagley.
Take care.
That's all for today's episode of The Blonde and the Bald. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you enjoyed today's show with Drs. Bagley and Sugar, remember, don't give up and just live with the pain. Come back next week and get more answers and solutions. Visit our websites at KeystoneChiroSPI.com and PrecisionChiropracticSTL.com for more info, and catch all the episodes of The Blonde and the Bald.